Glad to have you join us. I am Perpetua Fasami Peter. As Nigeria battles with a crashing local currency and rising inflation, the International Monetary Fund, IMF, has cautioned that dollarization is hard to revert. The IMF gave the warning in a recently released report titled Digital Money in Central Banks Balance Sheet. In the report, the IMF noted that market participants tend to protect themselves by preferring to hold dollars under high and persistent inflation environments. The IMF also acknowledged that most economies operate with a dollar bias for international trade and finance invoicing. However, with increasing pace of dollar scarcity and high inflation, dollarization levels in Nigeria have become a concern. The IMF report further noted that the bi-monetary system limits the role of the exchange rate as a shock absorber, as real dollarization implies a high pass-through from exchange rate depreciation to inflation. The Nigerian exchange rate has crashed to 800 Naira per dollar against the US dollar on the black market, while the exchange rate between the Naira and the US dollar at the importer and exporter window, that's the I&E official window, depreciated to 441 Naira 13 kobo per dollar. Vice President Yemi Osinbajo says current global crises, including energy crisis, climate change and the Ukrainian conflict, have presented an opportunity for developing countries to refocus their trade and energy priorities in favor of their peoples. The Vice President spoke in his office at the Presidential Villa Abuja when he received in audience the Nigerian-born Secretary General of the D8 organization, Ambassador Isiaka A. Imam. Nigeria is a member of the D8, which is an organization for development cooperation among 8 developing countries comprising Bangladesh, Egypt, Indonesia, Iran, Malaysia, Pakistan, and Turkey. Speaking on the need for closer ties among developing countries such as those in the D8, Osinbajo said, and I quote, "This is a very important time for member countries to really focus on the critical issues, trade and energy. But trade in particular, there is a need for greater trade engagement," end of quote. He noted that Nigeria offers great prospects for expanding trade among the G8 members, noting that, quote, "What we all really need to do is to look at how to use Nigeria as a point where you take off from the AFCFTA and some kind of entryway into the AFCTA," end of quote. The Senate on Tuesday refused to consider the 2023 budget for the Ministry of Defense after the minister, Bashiru Magashi, failed to honor invitations extended to him by the Senate Ad Hoc Committee on the Resuscitation of Nigerian Navy Ships. The Senate, through its Committee on Defense, reached a decision after an interjection by former Senate leader Yahaya Abdullahi, who drew the attention of other members of the committee to an earlier action of the Senate summoning the Minister of Defense to come before its Ad Hoc Committee to give explanations concerning the naval ships. According to Abdullahi, a motion was raised on the floor of the Senate chamber in February on the need to resuscitate the NNA, Aradu, which is Nigeria's flagship and most powerful in the fleet of Nigerian Navy. He reminded the lawmakers that the Senate subsequently set up an ad hoc committee chaired by him to interface with the Minister of Defense with a view to finding ways to resuscitate the grounded NNS Aradu. The Executive Vice Chairman of the Nigerian Communications Commission, Professor Umar Dambata, has stated that the telecommunications sector sustains 500,000 jobs. He disclosed this while speaking to a cross-section of stakeholders at the Cyber Chain Abuja 2022. The NC's Executive Vice Chairman noted that the sector's contribution to gross domestic product had also grown from insignificance to 12.61% as at the last quarter of 2021, noting that the sector had attracted $70 billion worth of investment to date. According to him, quote, from $500 million investments in the sector as of 2001, the telecommunications industry has recorded over $70 billion investment to date, while the growth in the sector has been phenomenal, from some 400,000 functional phone lines in 2001 to over 209 million active mobile subscriptions, achieving a tele-density of 110% as at August 2022, end of quote. The Nigerian National Petroleum Company Limited and Adax Petroleum Company signed an asset transfer agreement on Tuesday to bring an end to the dispute surrounding oil mining leases OMLs 123124 and 126137. NNPC's Chief Finance Officer Umar Ajiya signed the agreement on behalf of his company, while the Managing Director for ADAX, Yonghong Chen, signed for the oil firm. With the agreement, the protracted dispute on OML's 123124, 126137, operated by ADAX Petroleum Nigeria Limited, has finally been laid to rest. The production sharing contract for the blocks was initially signed in 1973 between NNPC and Ashland, but was terminated after 25 years. The NNPC then signed another PSC with ADAX in 1998 on the blocks and operated through ADAX Petroleum for another 24 years. The Organization of Petroleum Exporting Countries, OPEC, said that in the medium term, Dangote refinery's capacity will account for more than half of Africa's expected distillation additions. OPEC stated this in its latest World Oil Outlook released on October 31 and seen by newsmen. According to OPEC, Africa's distillation additions are estimated at 1.2 million barrels per day in the medium term. Dangote Refinery, which has a capacity of 650,000 barrels per day, will account for half of this number. Dangote Refinery is the largest of all the refinery additions that are expected across Africa in the medium term. Aside from the Dangote Refinery, other expected refining projects are also coming up in other parts of Africa. The Economic and Financial Crimes Commission, EFCC, has cautioned Bureau de Change against abuse of regulatory guidelines in discharge of their services to customers. The warning came days after the Central Bank of Nigeria CBN policy on redesigning 200 Naira, 500 Naira and 1,000 Naira banknotes was announced by the regulator. In a statement, Association of Bureau de Change National Executive Council said the EFCC advised all licensed BDCs to be extremely careful in their day-to-day operations by requesting customers' information during transactions. The agency advised BDCs not to be involved in cash couriers, which remains a serious infraction that can lead to prosecution of perpetrators. The Managing Director of the Nigerian Ports Authority, NPA, Mohammed Bello Koko, yesterday in Lagos, stated that the export processing terminal at Lily Pond in Ijora would further enhance Nigeria's non-oil exports currently in the region of $2.5 billion. In a bid to ensure prompt and seamless processing of export cargoes accessing Apapa and Tinkan Island ports in Lagos, the NPA yesterday inaugurated Nigeria's first export processing terminal at Lily Pond, Ijora. The terminal operator, Diamond Star Export Processing, would serve as a pre-gate from where export goods would move directly into the port. Bello Koko said the export terminal would help Nigeria optimize the benefits inherent in the African Continental Free Trade Area AfCFTA agreement, saying greater efficiency would be infused into the logistics surrounding the entry of export boxes into the ports for onward loading on vessels. Bello Koko, who inaugurated the terminal, said the facility would help reduce wastages and rejection of Nigeria's exports and also reduce the time wasted before exports gain access to the port. And moving on, Flour Mills of Nigeria PLC has said its unaudited financial statement for half-year 2023 shows strong revenue growth across business segments despite the challenging macroeconomic environment. A statement by the company said compared to half-year 2022, overall revenue increased by 38% to 721 billion naira, propelled by a favorable mix and some exchange-related pricing. It said the company achieved strong revenue growth, averaging 36% across all business segments, while operating performance in the food sector remained solid, notwithstanding a challenging environment with increased input prices and a somewhat softening volume base. The group is integrating the Honeywell business to realize the synergies anticipated, with focus on restructuring the balance sheet to reduce forex exposure and ensure manufacturing stability. This is expected to lead to strong results in the long term.